Settings, time, and place are units for measuring humanity and nature. Our actions and movement are measured in time and placed in space. When we look around ourselves, we understand that we're not only concerned about the well-being of our relatives, but also our neighbors. We need them. Whatever language we use, the word human carries a complex truth. The human is a noble creature. Human-centered work is one of the noblest deeds one can do. Human beings grow through many ups and downs in life. And while the likes of us face dangers because of man-made or natural events, standing by the side of victims is heavenly. Action for the Needy Ethiopia, ANE, is an indigenous humanitarian organization that stands for these values in partnership with Ethiopian government, UN agencies, embassies, donor countries, and organizations.
During our establishment, ANE had only even not more than 3 or 4 staff members, but now it grows up, and currently we have over 700 employed staffs in 10 operational areas.
The main donor for ANE humanitarian projects in Ethiopia are the United Nations High Commission for Refugees.
It is a local NGO which has created the capacity to expand itself to neighboring countries too. That is the goal we have set, and this organization has around 640 very professional workers which are working in different parts of the regions where the internal displaced, the needy, the refugees from neighboring countries.
In Ethiopia, ANE's humanitarian program covers provision of food and core relief items, CRIs, health, water, sanitation, and hygiene, WASH, shelter and infrastructure, education, livelihood, emergency services, environmental protection, energy, and psychosocial support for people with specific needs to meet the basic need of refugees, drought-affected host communities, and returnees from internal displacement.
The humanitarian situation in Ethiopia remains very high humanitarian situation, requiring more assistance, which is more funding it requires for the interventions by the international and the donor communities we have. So shortage of funding is one of the major challenges, addressing the assistance, covering the gaps, the huge gap of the country in all operational areas. Action for the Needy was able to establish the first humanitarian partnership with UAE Embassy in Ethiopia. Under this support, Action for the Needy had executed successful clothes distribution for more than 6,000 vulnerable people in different parts of the country.
Since its founding, Action for the Needy, ANE, has done various humanitarian deeds in all parts of Ethiopia. It has effectively used the finance it gets from its partners, mainly UNHCR and ARA.
In 10 years before, up to the current organizational growth and achievement on its overall humanitarian and development program in Ethiopia, the role of Refugee and Returnee Service, RRS, and United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee, which is UNHCR, has been taking the most fundamental and primary share in the impact, the daily living conditions of the most people of need we jointly serve in the country.
These projects benefited quite a number of refugees from neighboring countries, returnees from internal displacement, and vulnerable host communities. One of the best examples of these deeds is the support that it provides to South Sudanese refugees that fled the war in their countries who are now sheltered at refugee camps established in Gambela Regional State.
Action for the Needy has a specialized the thematic areas of the provision like food, nutrition, non-food item, emergency shelter, health, water, sanitation and hygiene, which is WASH, infrastructure, education's livelihood, protection, emergency service, environmental protection, energy, as well as psychosocial support for people with specific needs.
The South Sudanese refugees that are sheltered in the Nungyel camp testify how their lives were eased because of the gravel road that ANE built for them using funding resources obtained from UNHCR and
I fled the war in my country, South Sudan, and ended up in this camp. We faced many challenges, but now we're living peacefully. We have food and shelter. Our children also go to school.
We are alive because we came here. We are at peace now. Annie is hugely supporting me and my family. It constructed roads for us.
ANE has done immense development projects in the camp between 2017 and 2019. It has built us roads, water supplies, as well as various shelters. The shelters have saved the refugees from the rain, the sun, cold, as well as theft. We are always happy with what ANE is doing for us.
Apart from projects in Gambela, ANE also has various humanitarian projects in Benishango Gumuz, Oromia, Somali, South Nations, Nationalities and Peoples, Tigray, and Afar regions. Under its Bulehora Field Coordination Office in Bulehora town, ANE provides support to refugees, returnees from internal displacement, and vulnerable host communities. This Megado refugee camp hosts many refugees from Kenya. Ethiopia hosts hundreds of thousands of refugees from its neighboring countries with an open hand, supported by humanitarians like ANE and its partners, UNHCR and ARA.
The Megado camp shelters migrants came from 5 different areas in Kenya. ANE has provided these refugees with shelters, clean drinking water, and cattle so that they can sustain their lives. The refugees are happy because of this.
Currently, ANE is solving the drinking water problem in the Megado refugee camp by providing water using tanker trucks, and the community is grateful for this.
We used to drink river water. Many members of our family also suffered from waterborne diseases because of that, and we traveled far for more than 10 kilometers to fetch the water. But now ANE has solved our problems by supplying us water carried by our water trucks.
ANE has built residences, latrines, and washrooms as well as mills for the community use in the Moyale area Mogade refugee camp. Consequently, working on the conservation of nature, ANE has provided environmental protection services, sheep, and goats for Kenyan Borena refugees to improve their livelihood. And the refugees are happy because of this. In partnership with the Ethiopian government and UNHCR, ANE has also hugely contributed to the rehabilitation of returnees from internal displacement in the West Guji Zone, Oromia region, and Gedio Zone, SNNP region, one who fled conflicts. Furthermore, ANE has built houses and worked on environmental conservation for the better benefit of society.
In the West Guji zone, ANE has constructed 350 houses in 2 districts for 850 displaced householders. Apart from this, it has supported the displaced people as well as the host community by providing various food items. It also planted trees on 4 hectares of land. Students used to sit in mid-wall classes with, but now, because Annie has built this comfortable Bahia school, students who even had dropped out of school have resumed their education.
I want to thank Annie for enabling 2,200 students to get educated in this school since 2018. That's commendable.
Annie is also working hard for the sustainable reinstatement of returnees from internal displacement from Ghetto zones, Gelcha Kebele.
In the conflict that happened in Gedio and Guji areas, huge amount of property had been damaged. Understanding this problem, Annie has built and provided houses for the residents so that they resume their peaceful life.
Annie has also built and put in service a full-fledged hospital in Bulehora for the society to get standard health services. This is a testimony that Annie, along with the Ethiopian government and UNHCR, does not only stand for humanity, but also it has an egalitarian establishment.
Annie built this hospital within 3 months, and it has hugely solved the society's health service problems. Especially, women and children have benefited from the construction of the hospital.
Annie has been working as the protector.
Okay, that was in brief what Action for the Needy is trying to do in Ethiopia, where there is a lot of challenges. Challenges is understatement. People really suffer for lack of basic food, shelter, water, food. All these are important ingredients of. So I will try to give you some more details in a follow-up to the framework provided by Ato Salihu. The focus now is on empowerment. Previously, the focus was on delivery, but we feel now as humanitarian organizations, the time has come for people to stand on their own feet and fix things for themselves. The next slide is the tri-sector arrangement of societal growth and development consists of public sector, private sector, and NGO sector. So the purpose of this illustration is where does CSR stands? Is there an interface between CSR and what Action for the Needy does? Certainly there is quite a lot. Now the challenge is NGO responsibility is very highly critical in underdeveloped environment like Ethiopia. It's a double or multiple responsibility because of deep-rooted poverty and vulnerability, limited capacity to compete, recurrent disasters, and so on. So the challenge becomes quite a lot. Now, the genesis of ANE goes back, I heard that the CRS research was started in 2014. ANE was started in 2012, which is 2 years older than the current situation in CS. But still, we see a lot of interface between the CSR and what humanitarian organizations like ANE do. So at the beginning, as the genesis, the focus was on helping people affected by local disasters and also helping neglected refugees from Kenya. So that was how ANE started in terms of operation. Now, these are some of the samples which you already show in the introduction: shelters, food, water. These are the primary needs where the most vulnerable becomes even more vulnerable because of the challenges they face on a daily basis. Now, what is the experience? The experience ANE got from the start of the operation was Operationally, it leveled up its capacities and resources to be able to do more and to reach more areas in terms of outreach. Strategically, it consolidated the partnership. As the managing director said, the first partnership, the primary partnership, was started with the UNHCR because of the refugee focus. But gradually, as the challenges broadened, ANE was drawn into the challenge of doing things for the most vulnerable communities, because the most vulnerable communities cannot help others unless they are helped themselves. And then also because of the ongoing conflict in most of the African countries, the number of displaced population is increasing, and ANE had to respond to the IDP challenges. Now, this is a network of service delivery structure across the country. About 13 regional coordination offices are operational in more than 25 delivery centers in Ethiopia. Now, the experience is that as a result of this expansion, ANE is doing a lot more than it did in the past. The program diversity, as already narrated in the film, includes such things as water, shelter, energy and environment, and so on. ANE's partnership base has already also expanded tremendously. This is the partnership dynamics, how the mapping looks like from various UN agencies, multilateral agencies, national and international NGOs. As a matter of needs analysis, the focus on Ethiopia is also the focus in the Horn of Africa in a greater scope. So ANE is now trying to step up to the challenge and work as a regional organization in Africa based on a partnership agreement signed with IGAD. IGAD covers not only Ethiopia, but also Djibouti, Kenya, Somalia, South Sudan, Uganda, and about 8 countries in general. So ANE is at a tipping point to pivot to the challenge of doing things also across the region, but not only in Ethiopia. Now, what are the challenges currently? There is a growing concern for the risk of aid dependency. Aid does help to save lives, but also at the same time does not create capacities for sustainability. So that is why we focus on empowerment of communities now. Instead of the delivery things, then we also need to do a little bit ahead and look for the future, how communities themselves can create capacities. And whatever we do must be able to promote that ambition of communities to be able to do more, much better than in the past. Now, the key condition for success is to be contextually determined. Whatever we do, I heard in the morning, the prioritization sometimes does not fall in place. And therefore, we have to do a lot of analysis to be able to determine the context, and then the context will determine the nature of the program. So we are now pushing the scope for the refugees, IDPs, and vulnerable host communities. Now, let me just, by way of conclusion, ANE sees the need to see things in a process. There was a process of genesis, starting point, and then there was a process of growth, and then there is a process of development, where ANE finds itself now. But the development side is more challenging than the humanitarian side. And therefore, it is time to also really develop the partnership strengths the partnership capacity, the partnership quality. So we are hoping to see that some of you might be interested, and we have just developed some interest expression slip. If you would like to partner with ANE in any form or shape, we would like you to fill this small questionnaire, very small one-pager. We will take you around the table, and with that, I think I finished my remarks. The chairman is pushing for timing, so thank you very much for listening.